I got my first ever Brazilian wax. And thanks, Brian. Now I have some advice for you, gentlemen. If you want to get a Brazilian wax, before you do it, ask yourself if you want your dick and balls to look like a baby bird died struggling in a pile of chewed gum. If the answer is yes, get a Brazilian. Last year was also the first time that I got chlamydia, and the second time that I got chlamydia. It's within 3 months, what the fuck? Now if you find yourself desiring chlamydia, take home a woman from the bar that's not wearing shoes at the bar. That's how I did it the first time. I'm pretty sure I recycled and gave it to myself the second time. You figure out the math. I'm a big fan of folk music. I'm also a really big fan of masturbating. Yeah, I mean, who's not? But they don't mix. I've learned that it's really hard to ejaculate while Wagon Wheel is playing in the background.
You're not trying hard enough.
I tried really hard. Like, I thought that I was almost there, and then I just heard a trucker out of Philly had a nice long toke. I was like, that sounds so whimsical. This is bland. This is nonsense. I shouldn't be doing this. I should be out meeting truckers out of Philly, having nice long tokes. And then I never did that. Where else are we going here? Sometimes I say things that don't make sense, and other times they do, but most of the time they don't. One of the things that I said recently to somebody that didn't make sense was, there's a reason they call dope people cool cats, but they don't call cool cats dope people. And I'm not going to translate it. That's just a quote. Some weird wordplay, figure it out. Go ahead and pull up. Oh, Mason City, that's where I'm from. We already covered that. No, it's cool because it's actually like a small town, but sometimes you get to see like big city shit. One time I was driving to the liquor store, and I was at the stop sign on the street called Monroe, and I see these 3 people walking down the sidewalk. The middle one's a woman, and she's pushing a stroller. And my first thought was to pass judgment on these people because they looked like typical Mason City, meth addicts, not Mason City, same diff, synonyms, they're fun. But I didn't want to judge them because I want to be better as a person. So I'm like, maybe they've come from rough backgrounds, and now they're together as a trio, and they're taking their baby out for air, and they're taking it for a walk down the road so it can experience the beautiful sense of Mason City, factory work and pig shit. And maybe they're doing their best, and it turns out they weren't doing their best because the stroller that the middle woman was pushing didn't have a baby in it. It just had a 12-pack of Steel Reserve and an oven mitt in it. And the best part about that joke is that it's absolutely true, and it got validated like last month when my roommate came home. It's like, I was driving home from work, and guess what I saw? It's like, what'd you see, man? It's like, I saw those people. I was like, what people? The Steel Reserve and the oven mitt people. So now I know that wasn't just like a waking hallucination or anything. It actually happened. Another thing that happened to me in Mason City occurred at Taco Bell in Mason City. We were sitting down to get our free cheesy gordita crunches because our friend worked there. And this dude walked in and he asked us if we knew where to get unregistered guns or marijuana. I knew where to get 50% of that, but I knew 100% that I shouldn't tell him that because then I'd be involved. So we all said no. And they said, well, alright, but you guys looking to buy any mint condition Dragon Ball Z action figures? What kind of fucking life is that guy living? Like, on one hand, he's going out trying to like smoke weed and kill people, which doesn't mix in my mind because every time I smoke weed, I've never wanted to murder somebody. But then on the other hand, he's like got all this huge collection of unopened like Goku figures that he's ready to unload. It's confusing. For a really good portion of my high school career, middle school career, people thought that I was a homosexual, or gay, whatever. And I thought that I wasn't. I thought that I wasn't gay. But when enough people tell you the same thing over and over again, you start to kind of believe them. You know, you go with the crowd. So one second, this isn't right. I need to sit. Don't clap for that. I'm just having, oh man, I didn't realize there was camera work involved. I'm so sorry.
Perfect.
All right. Anyways, when somebody tells you something enough, you start to believe that maybe the crowd's right. So I decided to figure out if I was gay the only reasonable way possible by doing some good old-fashioned science. And that science looked like cornering my best friend Eric in the locker room one day after PE and saying, "Hey Eric," he was bisexual. "Hey Eric." He said, "What?" And I said, "Let me suck your dick." And he was my best friend at the time, and the reason that he was my best friend at the time, and the way that I know that is because he said, "All right." So me and Eric are trying to figure out where to do this, and we decide that my place it's not good because my mom gets off work at 4, and it's already 3:50. So we go to his place, and in the backyard he has, it's not really a tree house because there's not a tree there. It's just an elevated clubhouse with air conditioning and a microwave. And we get up there and he drops his pants, and then as like an afterthought, but like the most courteous afterthought ever, he goes over and flips on the AC. Like, I know you're about to be doing sweaty work, so I'm going to give you some good old-fashioned cooling. Actually, that's not old-fashioned, that's modern. Either way, flips on the AC, and at that point, I took my shirt off, and I'm not sure why. I didn't have to, but I felt like if there was going to be a dick in my mouth, I shouldn't have a shirt on. So I just flung it off. And I grasped it by the base with my left hand, and it wasn't really easing into it, it was just one fluid motion, and the minute that the head of his penis passed the threshold of my lips, the only thing I could think was, no. Now, I didn't have the luxury of being raised by a father, but if I did, that father would not have raised a fucking quitter. So, I took the head of Eric's dick to my tonsils until he finished. Silence. Good, that's good. And then I found out that I was not gay. I was in fact straight. So, if you guys are ever curious or wondering about your sexuality, I recommend just blowing a dude to completion and then reflecting about what happened when you did that, because it worked really well for me. I've always been comfortable with my sexuality ever since. Let's see here. Oh, sex in general. I don't really have good luck with sex at all. It used to end in a lot of crying. I have an ex-roommate here that can attest to all the stories I told about all the times that I would have sex with a woman and I was supposed to be proud, but it would end up, I thought she would like me more. But I do believe sex has some positive things to it. I believe that sex inspires creativity. I actually wrote an article about it last month. I called it How Sex Inspires Creativity. I got that title after the initial title, Why Crying for 2 hours After Something That Was Supposed to Be Fun Really Makes You Think, was a little bit too long. And the other title, Fuck It All, We Still Die, was too cynical. So there's that. I'm going to end with one that I I started with, not tonight, but I started doing comedy with this joke. It actually happened, so it's fun for me. Last January, my grandfather passed away. Thank God for that, because I'd never be here right now if that didn't happen. Yeah, but but he still died. It's not the right way to word that. He did die, still dead. There we go. So he passed away, and my family and I were coping with that the only way that us Iowan families knew how. We were gathering in the garage, and we were drinking a whole bunch. And through that process, we got to a point where me and my uncles were going to help my grandma start clearing some of my grandpa's stuff out of that garage. And we moved the lawnmower, the snowblower, and then we got to this point where we found like these 4 really large boxes that were like folded shut. And we opened the boxes, and inside was the largest collection of VHS and DVD porn that I've ever seen in my entire life. Now the thing about my grandfather was that he was basically, he made signs for people. He worked with computers every single day, but he never switched over to looking up his porn on the fucking internet. So he had this massive collection that was sprawled out before us, and me and my uncles are just staring at it in awe. Like, oh my god. The earliest one was from like the late 80s, and the most recent one was delivered 5 days before he died, and it wasn't even opened yet. Is that not sad to you? Like, yeah, you can die without telling your kid you love them, but you don't die without leaving a porn unwatched. It's sad. So, we're sitting there staring at it. My grandma walks up and she puts her arms around my uncle and me, and she leans in and she goes, yeah, you boys can take any of that home with you that you want. And that was problematic to me because the last thing that I want to think about with my hands on my dick is my dead grandpa. And second of all, when people get sick or when they die, they have benefits, like hold hands for Hannah. You've never seen a charity or a benefit called Rub One Out for Robert. Anyways guys, that's me. Bye.